Hello, everyone, and welcome to the sharing group. Today's lesson of A Course in Miracles is lesson 75, which states, "The light has come." The light has come. And today, everyone, I am so excited to introduce someone who has seen the light and is back to tell us all about it. Amanda Wideman had a near-death experience while in a car accident and has come back with the clarity of who we all really are. Amanda, we are so thrilled to have you join us today on the sharing group.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I'm glad we could connect.
Yes, me too. Me too. So you can start with your near-death experience and we'll just go from there. Start wherever you want to.
Sure. So it was August of 2017. I was 35 years old and I was traveling with my ex, and we were in our car driving down a high mountain road, one of those roads that's kind of hugs the side of the mountain, and one side goes straight up the mountain and the other side is like a big drop. And there was a concrete guardrail that was separating the road from the drop, but it wasn't very big. It was probably up to an adult's waist. And I was a passenger, he was driving, and an oncoming car lost control and crossed the double center line, coming straight into our lane. So it looked like we were going to have a head-on collision with him. And so we swerved out of the way towards the high mountain side, not the drop off. And we swerved onto the shoulder to avoid him. And we avoided him. And when we hit the gravel shoulder, which was pretty skinny, we lost control. And so we overcorrected. My ex, he kind of swung the steering wheel the other way, and that caused our car to spin around a couple of times. And we ended up hitting another car. We hit the car that was following the guy that lost control and crossed the double center line. And after our car hit that car, it flipped upside down. We landed on the concrete guardrail, and the front half of our car was kind of like hanging over the edge. And the other end of the car was on the roadside. The car basically landed and rested upside down with the wheels facing the sky. And when we opened our eyes, because the front seat that we were in was the part that was over the edge, all we could see was upside down evergreen trees going straight down. There was a 700-foot drop. And I always like to say when I tell this story that I had been working in this area as a paramedic for 13 years, a few towns away. So this wasn't my zone of duty, but we all knew about attending car accidents in this area, and that 99% of the time the cars would flip and go over the edge. Nobody would see a survivor. And we joked around that the paramedics that were assigned to that stretch of the highway for the first few years of their career had very little experience because they never got to see any survivors or treat anyone. So that's kind of the situation. Now, what happened for me, my experience of the accident was different. As soon as we lost control, the last thing that I remember seeing or experiencing of any of this, it was told to me, kind of the events on the road afterwards, but I just remember us swerving onto the gravel shoulder, and then my partner just losing control and us starting to spin. And at that point, it's like everything just registered really fast. I thought, okay, I'm going to die. An accident on this road means death. So while he swerved onto that shoulder, I closed my eyes and I leaned back into my seat and I relaxed my muscles and I closed my eyes as though a plane was going to take off. And I completely surrendered that this was my moment of death. There was nothing in me that believed I was going to survive whatever was going to come. And I left my body. I popped out of my body for the first time that I can remember ever doing this. And it wasn't like I was trying to or pushing myself out. It was just this, everything that happens now and forward in this story, it just happened to me without me trying to do anything. So I popped out of the body, and looking back, I lost my physical sight. I lost my physical hearing. I lost any sensation of my skin. And the most significant and surprising thing, I think, was losing the weight of the body. And all of us are so used to carrying around body weight 24/7 that we don't even think about it. We don't even think of that we've got, 100 or more, several hundred pounds that we're lifting all the time. And suddenly I had none of that. But I was still fully aware. I was still fully me. And this all happened and I just said it all in kind of like a sequential thing, but imagine all of this happening in less than a second. And so suddenly I'm in a space that seems to me, there's no images, there's no picture, light or color or anything. It's just black. But it's not black in a frightening or foreboding way. It's black and super silent. Like there's an absence of noise. It feels suddenly that I am safer than any moment of my human life. This place is the ultimate safety. So you imagine like the womb of a mother, or a hidden cave, or someplace where nothing could touch you. I was there. And I wasn't an overly anxious person, but I noticed an absolute lack of any nervousness, anxiety, or concern. And it had, like, if I had to kind of describe the feel of where I had arrived, it would be kind of pillowy, kind of feathery, kind of soft. It's not like I could actually feel those things, but there was that essence of being in a place that was very tender and almost, I want to say feminine, but I don't want to get into gender, but that soft flowing safety of what I would imagine as like a feminine essence. And then I realized very quickly again, I'm not here alone. Although I can't see anyone or anything, there's a massive presence here, kind of like if you're in a room of your house and someone's behind you just quietly doing something, and even though you can't see them, your back's facing them, you can feel their presence. It was like that. So I couldn't see anyone or anything, but the feeling was like that person in the room times 100. It was like I am surrounded by a presence. And on one hand, I could say it was just the presence of one being, but that wouldn't be entirely true. It was like the presence of one being that if I focused in, I could sense that it was actually many that were perfectly joined in perfect union, creating a presence of oneness.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd always heard, spiritual people talk about oneness and the experience of we are all one. And it's not that I didn't believe them, it's just that I hadn't had that direct experience. So it's just not something I could relate to until then. And then I experienced the version of myself that had popped out of the body there. And that version of myself really lacked a lot of the things that I was very much used to experiencing, such as my history on Earth, my gender, my personality, my hangups, like my issues of like all my stuff, social awkwardness and being self-critical and all kinds of quirks that we just kind of weave in and out of as a human. None of that was there. And yet it was still my awareness. It was me and my awareness taking in everything in a crystal crisp, clear way. And so without my body, without a memory really of my personal history, all that really remained of me, and I felt very full. It sounds like you would be missing without all that, but there's actually a real fullness and a realness and a wonder of what does remain. And that was my innocence, the fact that I am eternal.
Yes. Yeah.
My wonder, my curiosity, my childlikeness, my eagerness and anticipation for creation and experience itself. And this was a huge relief because I realized this is who I really am. All these pieces that kind of get mixed up with all the other stuff on Earth. I had this break from all that. And this is who I've always been and who I always will be. And so I'm experiencing myself in a new way. And then I'm also realizing I've been here before. I've been here many times. This is my home territory. This is 100% familiar. This is where I belong. This is where I'm known. No one questions my motives. No one takes things the wrong way. There's no comparison. There's no competition. This is where everyone is seen for who they really are, which is those things that I mentioned, that innocence, childlikeness, exploration aspects. There's no wondering. It's like, yeah, we just know. And there was no words exchanged, but I could feel that the beings that created that oneness that were around me, it was just like there was this, and I get chills saying this, kind of like eternal smile at me, like, remember? And I could feel them watching me remember. There was like this moment where it was like, just imagine someone who's on the edge of their seat watching someone walk into a surprise birthday party, that moment where everyone goes surprised and then the person realizes what's happening. It's like, oh.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. I love that.
And so it was like a reunion with all that is. And like I said, I couldn't physically see or make out individual characters, but I do sense that it was healthy and well ancestors, angels, beings in the angelic hierarchy, and the higher nature of all that has ever been created. And I didn't go much farther than that. I didn't have any meetings with religious figures, didn't have any conversations. I wasn't shown my future, none of that kind of stuff. This is all I really actually needed. And suddenly my hearing was back. I was back in my body. and I was upside down, and I could hear metal banging and screeching. I could hear people hollering, hear someone saying that they didn't want to go look at a dead body. And we were back. I was back. Now my partner, he never left his body. He was he was there the whole time. But I opened my eyes. I could see the upside down trees. I could hear his screaming. I was back in my body. Someone got us, we were kind of trapped in the car. Someone like got a crowbar and let us out. And there was, police and ambulances arriving, that kind of thing. And I was actually physically okay. And I guess you could call this an out of body experience. Yeah. I mean, some people say near death experiences, you have to be pronounced dead. But either way, I'm pretty sure you head to the same place. And I also do want to say that I do believe that this place that I went was like the threshold, was like the threshold of so much more. I don't want anyone to think, oh, when you die and go to heaven, you're just in this black place. I feel like it was like the beginning of what would be so much more. Anyway, so I'm back in my body. Someone lets me out of the car, and I'm just in this state of bliss. I recognize and I see that we've crashed our car and we've almost died. There's a big chaotic scene going on. I literally I did not care. I went in, I sat on that concrete guardrail. I let my feet dangle over the edge, and I just stared at the trees. And I was like, I've just been home.
Wow.
I know where we've come from. I know where we're going. We've come and gone through that threshold, who knows how many times. And I don't need to fear death. Either it's me here in the body or it's me out of the body. So what's the big deal? And so, yeah, everyone's freaking out about this accident scene, and I'm just in this state of bliss. Gratitude that I'm not hurt, for sure. But more than that, a gratitude that I know what I know now. No matter what anyone says is ever going to say to me or try and tell me, I know what I've experienced. And so nothing can argue with my direct experience now. And so, yeah, my partner, he got a concussion. I got a bit of whiplash on my shoulder, and I was off work for a couple of months. But that's the story of what happened that day.
That is absolutely profound. Thank you for sharing your story. That's absolutely profound. You got the best of an NDE, where you didn't have to have any kind of injuries or recover and be resuscitated, but you were able to experience home. And I do believe, like you said, it's all the same. You went home. So I have a couple questions. After your NDE, how did you, so after your, we'll say out of body, after your out of body experience, how did you process everything? So you've had this incredible experience, you've experienced home, that, and I don't know if you had any awareness before this that you were not your body, but definitely after this, you are aware, I am not my body. And not only that, but I'm so big and huge and, just love and light. So how did you process everything going forward?
Yeah, it's been about 6 years. And I would say that I'm I'm still integrating and processing it now. But what happened was, it's kind of interesting. I'll just back up quickly to say that about 6 months before, 6 or 8 months before this happened, I wasn't somebody who was really that interested in like out of body phenomena or esoterica. If I watched YouTube's, it was like how to do it yourself videos. But I remember my ex being out of town on a trip, and I was painting the living room. And I thought, I'm going to put on a YouTube, like a long YouTube video, so I can listen to something while I'm painting. And something in me was like, look up near-death experiences, maybe learn about that. So I just randomly, and back then there wasn't a lot online about this the way there is now. And I found this like 2 hour lecture, 2 hour talk, and it was actually kind of hard to follow. It was kind of academic. It did have a guest, and I put that on, and I just remember it landed with me. It was like, yeah, I believe the person who's speaking. There's nothing that I doubt about any of what I heard. So that was interesting because it was just random. Anyway, coming back to after the accident, I was off work for 4 months, and they wanted to make sure my shoulder was okay to lift people again at work. And I just remember like hanging out on the couch for like 4 months straight. And I was still in massive amounts of bliss.
Wow, nice.
And I've never experienced anything like this before. Nothing would bother me. Like, if there was bad news, or my partner, like he got a concussion and he didn't handle it so well. But if he was freaking out about something, it didn't even like rattle me or bother me. And then some interesting things happened. Like I said, again, I'd never been really in touch with any kind of psychic phenomenon or anything like that. It just was not really in my radar. And I found this woman on Facebook. I don't even know how I found her, but she was doing intuitive readings. And something in me was like, I like her vibe, but I feel like I can trust her. I feel like she's got good intentions. I did this intuitive reading with her. And this would have been 3 months after the accident in November. Yeah. And she said to me, and I have no children. I had no plans to have children or adopt children or anything. She said to me, there's a child coming to you. He's age 3 or 4 with blonde hair, and he's coming to you by an unusual method, and he'll be there in 6 months or June, whatever that is. And then she corrected herself. She goes, no, 7 months. And he's got no siblings. And his presence is going to change your life forever. It's going to bring you and your partner closer. And then it's going to bring you to a decision that's really going to radically change both of your life. And to be honest, when she told me that, nothing really resonated with me. And I was like, okay, I paid her the money. And I literally just kind of like forgot about it because I was like, I'm not looking for a kid, whatever. And then the beginning of June, one of my ex's close relatives who lived like 4 hours away, who we only saw like once a year, got a hold of him and said, I'm in a bit of an emergency. Could my son come and stay with you and Amanda for the summer? They knew we had like a big house, and my husband, he wasn't working still. He had, the concussion. And so he said to me, hey, Amanda, is it okay if the boy comes? And I said, okay. And it turns out like this boy was 3, he had blonde hair and no siblings. And he came, and it was interesting because my ex, he still was dealing with a lot of anger from after the car accident as well as the concussion. He wasn't regulating himself at all. And around that time, he had started to get violent, hitting walls, and like he had gotten violent with me a couple of times. And when this boy came, he was with us for like 6 weeks. And one day my ex, he got really aggressive. And I looked at the boy and I looked at the situation, and something clicked in me and was like, you got to get out of here. You've got a young boy here. He should never be exposed to any violence. You got to get out of here. And I'd been with my ex for 13 years. And that day I took him and I went to the police station, and I ended up pressing charges. And that was the end of my 13-year relationship. And I never, like, I don't know how long I would have stayed in a violent relationship, because I actually really cared about my ex. I just knew he was really unwell. But because of that boy, I decided to leave. And then soon after that, I'm by myself in this big house, and the boy, he went back to his family. I'm by myself in this big house, and I'm like, this isn't my dream to live by myself in a house. Like, and it's not really my dream anymore to work so hard. I was working, like 50 hours a week as a paramedic. I was doing night shifts. I'd been doing that for 13 years. And I'm like, I want a new life. I don't know how many years I have left, and I don't know if I'm going to suddenly die for real ever. I'm going to get living. And so I sold my house, And I had some savings from selling the house. So I quit my job. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was just like, this is what I'm going to do. My intuition started to really kick in and give me ideas that I would act on right away. And I'd also, in that year, become a lot less attached to my material things. I mean, I wasn't like someone who was like a hoarder or like a big spender anyways, but I was like a typical Western person with a 3-bedroom house full of stuff. And I was like, wow, this feels heavy. Like, this feels heavy. My nervous system had gotten a lot more sensitive since the accident. I'd become a little bit more intuitive and empathic. And one of the things that was like strongly sensed by my nervous system was anything that was like causing any energetic heaviness. And that was all my stuff. So when I sold my house, like instead of putting everything into storage and looking for a new house, I basically gave everything away. I sold a couple of things and then I just put like a Facebook ad up in the buy and sell, and I just basically first come, first serve. And yeah, I moved myself into a camper van with my 2 dogs, and I spent almost 2 years in Western Canada um, camping, visiting friends I hadn't seen in a long time, basically praying and meditating and being immersed in nature. And those 2 years were just incredibly profound. It was like sometimes many days in silence. I'm like, wow, like this opportunity to actually hear my own self, to connect with the inner guide of who I call like the divine essence or the Christ essence. I can't believe I get this opportunity to actually listen in a way that I didn't realize was possible.
There is so much here, Amanda. So much here, so much that you shared. So, first of all, I want to say this. It feels like, so you had a radical change. You had a radical change after this experience. I get the analogy of once you were out of your body and you were released from the heaviness of the body, that you enjoyed that experience, and then the weight of all these things, you realized, I don't need all these things. And I heard from another interview that the more you let go, it kind of opened up a new space energetically for you to ascend in some kind of way or have a new experience, which I find incredible. Our things do weigh us down. They become attachments. And so I love that you were able to let go of the house and just be free and reconnect with nature. Did you have a different experience with nature after this experience?
Yeah. I'd always been someone who, like I love my pets, and I had like some gardens, like I would say like I was appreciative of nature and did my best to respect the environment. But with that enhanced sensitivity that came in from this experience, I started to have experiences with nature that were a little bit more intense than what I was used to. And it started off being things that I started to notice. Like sometimes I would hear the lyrics of a song, and right at a certain line of the song that obviously I was supposed to listen to, there'd be a crack of thunder or a blast of lightning. And it was so obvious that I was being communicated with by the oneness that nature really is a huge, massive part of. And often too, I would go walking in barefoot, in the forest, wherever I was camping and that kind of thing. And I would hit feelings of just, sometimes my heart would just like warm up. I'd be like, yeah, like there's not such a huge difference between a human being and, a piece of nature or whatever, as far as both being part of creation. And of course, we're totally different than a plant. I realize that can sound kind of funny, but we are interdependent on each other. We're not like these superior things that are here just to consume and use nature. So I started to experience nature as more of like a system that I was part of, that I wanted to pay more attention to its signs and its cycles, which previous me would have thought that that's the hippie talk. But when I started to have these direct experiences, I realized like maybe they were onto something, because this is becoming real for me.
I love how, thank you for that. That's beautiful. I love how the universe assisted you in every step with your personal integration of this experience in a space that what that resonates with you. And I love how the little boy assisted you in recognize, a lot of times, especially not just women, but people who may be in a relationship that's verbally or physically abusive, we may not get to a point where we don't recognize our own needs, right? And so what a perfect way for you to really objectively see the situation. Like you said, wow, this is violent. Like, no, this isn't right. And it motivated you to change that situation. I just see how it, just hearing your story makes me experience through your experience how the universe at every step helps us get to that next step that it knows we should be at. I find that very profound. Tell us about the ayahuasca experience.
Yeah, I feel like I could write a book on that, but I would say that my experience with ayahuasca, which the first time I went to an ayahuasca ceremony it was within 1 year of the car accident. It's not something that I knew much about or ever thought that I would participate in prior to the accident. I think I'd seen a documentary about how ayahuasca was helping some people with addiction problems. Anyways, it wasn't in my radar. And it started out I went to a meditation retreat. It was a weekend retreat. And the woman that was facilitating the retreat, I didn't know her or anyone else there. But I remember when I arrived at the property and she greeted me, and she just looked at me, and she had this look in her eyes that I hadn't been looked at like that before in my life. There was a crystal clear look in her eyes where I felt like she was looking right through me. I felt like she was looking right through me, and she could see things or know things about me. And it at first kind of made me feel a bit uncomfortable, but there was also this glow that was coming from her as well. And I was like, whoa, I don't know what's up with this person, but I'm glad she's the facilitator. And so at the last day of the retreat, I was having a conversation with her, and it was just, I think, an hour or so before it was time to go. And another car pulled up to the retreat property, and she touched me on the shoulder and said, "Hold on, Amanda, I need to go see that person." And she ran over to the parking lot where this car was coming. And she's like a 30-something-year-old woman, but she bolted. What's going on, right? And she came back not long after and said, that's my ayahuasca facilitator. I help support her at some of her retreats. And she's really helped change my life more than anything else. And I just thought at that moment, something clicked. Whatever these people have, this is what I want. And, I'm someone who had, I'd been through the near-death experience. I was always kind of into self-help, that kind of thing. I'd grown up in a Christian church. I'd been part of charismatic church services. I had experiences that people might call like the Holy Spirit baptism and all that stuff. But I'm telling you, there was something that was like next level about being with these people. I'd never been with people like this in any of those places. And so I found out how to go to one of these ceremonies that this woman was having. And I ended up participating in many ceremonies with her over the next 2 or 3 years. And she was Canadian. She was like a tall Caucasian woman. If you saw her on the street, you wouldn't think anything. But she had trained for many years with people from the Amazon. She's also had like, I think her master's in psychology. She's a somatic coach. Super quiet, super humble. As soon as I met her, I was like, yeah, I trust this person has got like a vibe. Like if I trust anyone, it's going to be her. So anyway, that's kind of how I got connected with the ayahuasca. And so, yeah, I wasn't actually looking for anything specific. I wasn't looking to like, oh, I want to leave my body and go back to that place that I went. I didn't even know what I wanted other than I wanted to become a person that was like these people that I had started to meet and follow what they were doing. And I had been told that it was going to be very hard. Like it's very rare to have like go into a ceremony and it's just like a pleasant experience. And I didn't care. I was like, you know what, whatever. I've left my body. What do I want to experience now in this life? This is the type of thing. And so I approached ayahuasca. People go for different reasons, but I went for emotional healing. I had had early childhood trauma, some that I remembered and some that I kind of only remembered a little bit. And I knew on some level that things that I'd been through were affecting the way that I reacted to the world around me now. And I wanted to address those things. I'd also heard that ayahuasca can be like 10 years of therapy in one night. And although I did see a therapist, I thought let's just see. And through those ceremonies, there's many things that happen, many visionary experiences. But I think some of the things that really stayed with me and landed and helped me to heal and integrate and know myself more were repressed memories that came back to me from my childhood, starting around, some of them were even as a baby, going up to like maybe age 4 or 5, things that I totally 100% forgot happened. And revisiting them and re-experiencing them, like detail by detail, moment by moment, allowed me to understand and see why I had certain issues as an adult. And I can share an example. When I was 4, I knew that I had had a tonsillectomy surgery. All I really remembered was that I'd gone to the hospital and they gave me popsicles for weeks after, and that I had to take some nasty penicillin. I don't remember anything else. But in this ceremony, I find myself in a vision. I can barely notice I'm on Earth in a ceremony. I'm like 99% experiencing this vision where I'm lying in a hospital bed on wheels. There's a nurse trying to give me a needle, which is a general anesthetic. I'm afraid of needles, so I'm pulling away. And then she tells my parents, don't worry, we can give her a gas mask. Don't worry about the needle. I can smell antiseptic. I can see pastel green, itchy hospital blankets. And then I'm getting wheeled into this operating room where someone puts a mask on me and everything turns black. But in the vision, I could hear everything. I had no senses. I had no pain, but I could hear doctors talking. Oh, she's out. Yep, she's out. Okay, hand me the scalpel. Hand me the different instruments. They're making jokes. And then there's and I don't feel anything in the vision, but there's like almost like a vibration in my throat. And then I hear someone say cauterize, and then I hear someone say done. She's done. The whole operation was like less than 5 minutes. Then I get wheeled back to a waiting room, and I wake up, and I notice that nobody's there. Like there's no nurses, no parents, and I have what I consider my first panic attack of my life. And there's no blame for anything. This is just what happened. But I realized, wow, a lot of the times where I found myself reaching, needy, behaving in codependent ways. A lot of the reasons that people do these kinds of things is because of these moments in childhood that we completely forget, but something registers in our nervous system. I am not safe. I am alone. There's no one to support me. And so, again, I could tell you so many stories of repressed memories that I relived that explained to me and helped me to have compassion on myself for the first time about different hangups. Why I am like I am. And we get shaped, by the first 7 years of our life, especially. So we've got, millions of adults out there that are so hard on themselves for the strange patterns and the maladaptive behaviors they do. And they're lacking so much compassion and understanding for that child version of themselves. So that's a little bit about the main things that came to me through ayahuasca as far as my personal healing.
My head is literally, I'm doing this. Like, this is so, I love this. This is so rich and true. I often tell people, I had a dynamic dream where I was frustrated with myself, and I'm like, God, I can't believe I haven't gotten over this situation. And I had a dream that night, and I believe it was a message from God, where I was holding this baby, and this woman was telling me, I could not hear what she was saying, but I could feel what she was saying. And I was holding her baby, and she was telling me, basically, I'm done with this kid. Like, I'm frustrated. She was frustrated, and I'm holding the baby, and I remembered the weight of his body. I remember his little chin, his little head under my chin. And all of a sudden, this gush of love energy just comes out of me. And I remember in a dream feeling like I can't believe all this is coming out of me. It was like power. It was like warm energy. But the message from that was very clear. Treat yourselves as you would a baby. You wouldn't tell a baby if it's trying to learn how to walk, why haven't you figured this out yet? You would hold it and say, you are so beautiful, and I'm so proud of you. And I love, Amanda, you have so much through your experiences. I love this experience that you were able to go back and exactly what you said, be patient with ourselves. We are in a dimension where we are used to judging everything. And we don't know what unconditional love looks like, our parents, as much as they tried, did not unconditionally love us. And so we don't treat ourselves in that way. But what an incredible experience and opportunity to have those layers of knowledge that you have to more inform you. Like you said, this is why I have these patterns. Did you have, with the ayahuasca experience, did you have an intention of having these memories, or did it just come to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the main things that we do before the ceremony is everyone shares an intention, and then it's held by the group. You say it out loud before God, and then also to the brothers and sisters that are with you. And she told us to make the most simple intentions, and that gives the spirit full free reign, but still guide our intention. So most of the time, because I sat in many ceremonies, but most of the time my intentions were very similar. They were things like, show me what I need to know. Because in our waking life, we only look at what we want to look at, right?
Mm-hmm.
Heal my heart. And one of the more hardcore intentions, I didn't realize it was at the time until the after, but I asked for balancing of my lower nature. I don't recommend that you do that unless you want to devote a couple of years of challenging and facing the dark parts of yourself. But for the most part, it was show me what I need to see.
Mm. I love that. I love that. So tell us about, there's so much I want to talk to you about. First of all, before I get too far, I did want to make sure I included the part of your story during the car accident. You said you saw psychically a large hand. I know you talked about many of the accidents on that stretch. The car just falls to, and people fall to their death. But that you saw a large hand holding the car up so that it would not fall. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. I was not too long after the accident. I don't remember how long, but within the first year, I was just kind of sinking into my couch. And, and just before you fall asleep, but you're still awake and you're just kind of like really relaxed, I saw a picture in my mind, and I wasn't focused on the accident that day or anything, but it just popped in there. And it was kind of like if someone was like having a bird's eye view of the accident scene, and there was like a massive hand, like maybe I would say maybe the size of a 4 or 5-story building.
Wow.
And it was on the other side of the guardrail just before going over the edge. And then there was like the image of our car in the crash where it had landed. And I'd always known that we were protected and safe and that there was like a reason for all of this. I just assumed that it was just, kind of obvious. But seeing that picture, it never left me. It kind of confirmed, oh, this is the energetic support that stopped my car from going over the edge. This is all scripted on a higher level.
Wow. That's incredible. That's incredible. I love that. I kind of get the feeling that your higher self or spirit guides use that opportunity in that moment to almost get you back home and give you downloads so that I get the impression that you came in this lifetime with a very benevolent mission or purpose. Like us all, we all have purpose here. And it was just kind of like a homecoming, especially with the hand holding the car. That car was never supposed to fall. I feel like there was never a chance that it was gonna fall. That's so cool. I love this stuff. Okay, so tell us about, you talked about that you saw a woman that you interacted with, a friend on this side, right? But you and her, your souls interacted on the other side. You know what I'm talking about. Tell us about that.
Yeah, sure. This was, I would say the last ayahuasca ceremony I sat in was 2 years ago. And this was like, I don't know if it was the last one or the second last one. And that night, it's hard to say like, oh, this was the most profound night of my life or ceremony of my life. But I remember coming out of this ceremony and saying to myself, if I never sit in another ceremony, that's fine. I have the information that I need for the rest of my life. And what happened in that ceremony, a lot of the times, everyone's different, but it's very common to have the first part of the ceremony to feel very heavy and very dark. And it can be frightening for some people, because what's happening is the medicine songs that the ceremony guide is singing they work energetically with the medicine that we drink in our body, which kicks in about 30 minutes after you drink it. And so these songs, they they basically are songs that have existed for thousands of years. They're passed down generation to generation through the elders in the Amazon. And they have a way of activating the medicine in your body. The songs are singing to your soul. And if you're a very sensitive person, you can hear these songs while you're sober and you can feel energy. Or if you've drank the medicine a long time in the past and you hear these songs, you can feel energy if you hear someone singing it, like today. But when you're actively feeling the effects of the medicine and these songs get sung to you, that's what activates visions. And that's something that a lot of people don't know. They think that you can just go drink a plant medicine and you're just going to have all these visions. Yeah, but they're not going to be guided by anything. They could be upsetting or random or whatever. So the first part of this ceremony was quite dark, as it often is. And they're singing the songs that start to call up kind of like the sludge, let's say, stuff that we aren't looking at in our life that is very ego-based, that's selfish, that's, competitive or comparative with other people. You start to really feel that. And if you're a woman, when you're on your menstrual cycle and everything just kind of feels overwhelming and big,
Yes.
even though it was there all month,
yes.
it's kind of like blasted. Okay, so that's kind of like what's going on times more. So I'm in this dark place. And some of my worst fears are coming up and my heart is racing. And I'm like, what am I doing here again? Like, haven't I learned my lesson? Like, did I really need to come back and do this again? It was just such a horrible, horrible feeling of whatever was like coming up. So I was sitting with it for like 5 minutes. And I don't know if it was 5 minutes. It seemed like that. And then suddenly I remembered, oh, right. When this kind of thing happens, you're supposed to surrender. And you don't think of that when you're all activated. And so I remember leaning back into my pillow, and as best as I could, I just like the car accident, I leaned back and I tried to relax my muscles and just close my eyes and be like, God is in control of everything. Whatever's going on in my body and in my mind right now, I'm going to give that into control to God as well. And so very quickly, like I would say like less than 30 seconds of me shifting into that mode, everything changed. And it was like the sky opened up and parted ways. Like it was dark in the room, dark with my eyes closed. But even with my eyes closed, everything turned bright. I kept them closed. Everything turned very bright. It almost looked like snowflakes with the sun hitting them, like pixely. And then the next thing I could see was this. It looked like a really tall tower, like a cone-shaped sort of tower. And on the outside of the tower was like a balcony that went round and round in a spiral. And the tower was bright and golden. And around the tower, there were like beautiful birds. There were angels. And the tower itself almost looked like it was alive, like it was moving. It was vibrating with the music from the guy who was singing. And, it was kind of like, you could even see kind of like shapes moving around it, kind of like geometrical shapes. And when I looked closely at the tower, I could see people. I could see like people standing on this balcony. And it just seemed like there was like millions, never ending people. And it kept going higher and higher and higher to the point where no matter how hard I focused, I couldn't quite see the next level. I got to the top as I could visually see. There were trees growing out of the tower. There were animals. And it kind of seemed like the bottom half of all the people and the trees was attached and part of the tower. So you could identify certain people by their face, but kind of like the bottom half of them like melded in, was attached to the tower. And so you could think of anyone, any human being, dead or alive, and you could immediately locate them on the tower. It's kind of like a video game, I guess it starts to sound like, but they would be shown to you if you focused your awareness on them. And I realized this is the higher self, or a version of the higher self of everyone who's ever been created, as well as plant spirits, animal spirits, angels. And because I'm still like in touch with my humanness, there's a level which I'm not pure enough to see that's
Mm-hmm.
higher. And so in that moment, I located myself, and there was a woman beside me on the tower. So it was the higher self of me, and it was the higher self of her. And this is not someone I was expecting to see in a vision. It's a woman that I know from Earth who who if I was honest, I would say that she rubbed me the wrong way. I probably rub her the wrong way. We've never really gotten along, but we were in the same social circle. And like there was never any actual problem, but it was more just like vibe.
Mm-hmm.
And there we were on the tower, the higher self of each of us. And we both looked really, really amazing. We were looking like we had sparkly gowns. Our skin was glowing. It was like all of our best features. And up there too, like people had like glowing marks on the outside of their body that
Wow.
looked kind of like tattoos, but really beautiful. And they were energetic signatures of like aspects of us or things that we had accomplished in Earth lives. So we had kind of like a story, a living story on our skin.
Wow.
And up there we were the best of friends. We were laughing together. We were observing from up there the Earth versions of ourself down here. And so from that perspective, like I could kind of take myself and then switch my awareness up very temporarily to the higher self version of me, be with her and laughing and feel that camaraderie. And at the same time, look down to earth and see myself and others walking around on earth, totally oblivious to the higher self world, rubbing each other the wrong way, all these things. And I realized also, like I said, I had grown up in church, and there is a verse in Hebrews that said something like, because we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let's throw off every weight that ensnares us. And I am like 99% sure that whoever wrote that saw a vision that was quite similar to me and understood what reality is. We're constantly surrounded by this tower, this cloud of witnesses, which is our higher self and everyone else's higher self.
Wow.
And that did remind me that I can throw off weights, such as my hangups. For example, my hangups around this woman. And as the medicine started to kind of wear off a little bit, and I was coming back into my body and back into my earth awareness, I kind of see both. I could that higher self world was starting to disappear, and then I was like halfway down. I'm going to call it like the fifth dimension. If that was the seventh dimension ish, I'm back in the fifth dimension. So I'm still kind of floating, and I'm still kind of laughing. I'm laughing. I'm like, wow, I got everything figured out now. I understand why we have so-called enemies and frenemies and stuff. And it's to test our levels of love and to allow us to develop love for people, even if they are not treating us with love. It's like, can you do this? Can you do it?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm kind of coming back into my body, and now I'm like fully back into my body, and I'm in this ceremony room, and there's people vomiting, but me, I'm just like, I'm giggling into my pillow because I'm like, oh my goodness, I got this all figured out. I know who all these people are in this room. Some of them I love them, some of them I'm indifferent. The one over there I don't really like so much, but that's us up there. And I was like, I just want to tell everybody. But of course, everyone's having their own visions. it's not
Right,
it's not like they got to see what I got to see. And so now I'm responsible for looking at people like this woman or anybody else and understanding, okay, I don't have to be everyone's best friend, but I do need to recognize what's actually going on.
I love that story. I love that story. And I understand that you guys, your higher self on that tower, were looking down at your earthly selves and cracking up about how serious everything felt for us on this earth plane. And I love that. I wanted you to share that because it's like a reminder to all of us. Like you said, we are among these witnesses, which is so beautiful, such a beautiful way to put it. We all have higher selves, right? And just out of recognition of that reality, the true essence of who we are, to really see people differently. I mean, on the other side, the person that we don't like very much can be our very best friend, because they are our teachers, and they're the ones who, the souls that volunteered to be that energy for us so that we can grow. What a beautiful experience. I've heard you say that some of us are here for the world, to change the world, but also for the world to refine us. Can you talk about, having experienced the other side, Amanda, can you talk about what it does for the soul to be in this dense realm? What do we
Yeah.
get? Mm-hmm.
You know, based on some of the experiences after my car accident, either between ayahuasca or some very larger than life, vivid dream spaces. Before, and I would say like before my accident, I would have like vivid dreams or dreams that were messages. But afterwards, it was almost like every couple of months, I would like leave my body in the nighttime and kind of like pick up on something that I left off with. Like we have a life, all of us, that's outside of our body. We leave our body when we sleep at night.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, we don't remember most of what goes on. It would probably be, like, for the most part, a little bit too confusing or rattle our earth. Like, we don't need to.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes through these situations, hold on one sec. Can you just ask that question again so that I remember where I was
Yeah,
going?
no, I was just asking, how does being here on this dense realm, right, on this planet, in these bodies, right, what does that do for the soul for us?
Right. Okay. So in that spirit realm, now I remember, in that spirit realm where a large part of us, our higher self, always is, we're all knowing. We can zoom into any kind of situation or have any kind of question, and we can just focus and get the answers, get the information. It's not really that challenging because energy works so quickly there, and we know all the laws of those things. We just have an all-knowingness or a lot of knowingness. But the downside of being in the spirit world is that developing the soul, it doesn't happen very fast because of that, because things can be easy.
Mm-hmm.
So here on Earth, in my opinion, this is a school of forgetfulness. And it's a place where a part of our self comes, because like I said, there's always that higher self outside of time, the big part of us. But a small part of us comes here and is always connected, comes here to be in a body, which is going to have illness, it's going to have pain, it could have disabilities, all of these kinds of things that for the most part we can't change, at least not immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And the body itself is an incredible vehicle, but it causes a lot of density, weight, heaviness, and challenge. And it also stores, emotional trauma and memories that can get triggered all the time and cause us to get in crazy moods. So Earth, in my opinion, a lot of us that grew up in the West, especially if you grew up in a religion or, a do-gooding family, you think we got to change the world. We've got to go start this charity. We've got to volunteer at the soup kitchen and all this kind of stuff, which is all really important stuff to do. But that's only, to me, that's only half of it. It's very important to support people who have less than, and to develop systems on earth that are going to, support greater amounts of people and change the world by doing these outward acts. But to me, the other half of it, probably the more important part of it, is allowing the conditions of earth, all of the harsh conditions and experiences that we have here, to shape us, like that statue, somebody's carving a statue. Every time that tool hits that piece of rock, it's like cutting at it, but eventually it's turning into like a really beautiful work of art. But the entire time it's like having chips cut off of it. If it could feel anything, it would be in a lot of pain. And so that's kind of what it's like to be here on earth. Every experience that is a challenge for us, or worse, is developing our soul. And that's something that's not available to us in the spirit worlds.
That's a profound way to explain that, because we know that we technically know everything as on the other side as the soul, but I always tell people it's such a rich opportunity for the soul to come in this school called Earth, because you're able to grow in ways that, that's why we have the forgetfulness, so that our souls can grow in those ways. That's beautiful. So why don't you talk about, Amanda, your spiritual practice of surrender, and then maybe you could get into like what you do, what services you offer.
Yeah, I realized that when these out of control things happen to us, we have two choices, and most of us automatically react, with a contraction or a freeze or a defensiveness, or even just like a self-talk, like, this isn't fair, this has gone wrong, I've got to figure out a way to change this, I'm going to bulldoze myself through. I think no matter who you are, you immediately have these reactions. Since my car accident, I've realized that sometimes no matter what you do, something's going to take place and play out like a car accident. And so with that awareness from like having a big experience of needing to surrender in order to have like the best possible outcome, and also coupling with kind of having a more sensitive nervous system than I used to have, where, for example, if something kind of goes wrong in my day or is unexpected, the previous version of me that would just kind of go with the flow and be that paramedic, I will get a little bit more of a shock to my system when something goes out of control. Nowadays, I can feel things more strongly in general. So in order to be with that nervous system, it's kind of a blessing in disguise, because it forces me, in order to have like a good quality of life, you can't be constantly contracting and getting shocked by everything. And so the alternative is to surrender, is to learn how to more quickly switch to that. And I have to. I also had a Kundalini activation, Kundalini rising, that is still going on in my body. Basically, long story short, where the energy from the base of the spine rises and gets released, sometimes in waves of hours of time. And what it will do, it will hit different blockages, different energetic, emotional blockages in the body that's trying to clear through. And that can be physically painful, and it can be emotionally overwhelming. And every time that happens to me, I also have to surrender. And on a like a realistic, like what do you do when something goes wrong and you need to surrender? Like realistically, what does that practice look like? I literally take a minimum of 5 minutes, no matter where I am, even if I'm like with other people, I'll be like, oh, I'm going to use the washroom. I take 5 and I feel what is going on in my body when I'm by myself. If I have like a contracted stomach, if I have a very tight chest, if I'm breathing, I just take a scan. How is my body reacting to whatever I don't like? And how can I take that body part and bring it back to equilibrium by relaxing it? Because the body is holding all the energy of whatever you're going through. For me, it's my stomach. Usually my stomach will tighten up really, really hard, almost like I'm flexing my abs, but I don't want to. And so I'll take that 5 minutes, hopefully less, and I'll literally like relax every muscle in my stomach, stick my belly out like I'm pregnant, whatever. And then once that is relaxed, naturally the body will breathe a little bit slower. Will breathe a little bit slower. And I'll just mentally remind myself that God, nature, that's what's in control. And all I can do is respond in the most peaceful way and make the best choices I can. But it really goes, for me, it really goes back to surrendering in the body, like I did in the car accident, like what happened in the ayahuasca ceremony when it was a tight squeeze, and like I do every time I remember to in a tight squeeze in life.
That's significant. Surrender is significant. Thank you for that. So I know that I read that have been you have experience as a hospice companion, and that you've just done, which is powerful. I feel like anybody that does work as a hospice, assistant or whatever, is just powerful work that you have to have so much compassion and presence. But can you tell us a few things that you've learned from that experience?
I'd love to, yeah. After my car accident, I got trained to be a hospice companion. It's on a volunteer basis. And the reason that I did that was because I was just really longing to be, it sounds kind of selfish now that I say it out loud, but I was really longing to be with other people who had experienced or were starting to experience the other side. And I did know that, because from being a paramedic, I was often with people who were in the last days of their life. And I knew from them that the dying, especially if it's not like a sudden accident, dying is a process. And when you're in your last days or weeks of your life, you can be kind of present and focused on this material world, or you can slip for periods of time into the world that you're headed into next, in another kind of dreamy dimension. So I wanted to go be with those people and learn from them and support them in a way that they were with someone that believed what they were saying. Because I could even see, in the paramedic world, people just kind of like, oh yeah, they're hallucinating or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, okay, well, wouldn't it be, if I was dying, I would love someone to be sitting with me that believed what I was saying
Mm-hmm.
and could support me in that process. So the way it worked is they would match you up with one person, maybe two people in the care home, and then you would visit them a couple times a week and kind of develop that relationship. So I remember being with a man, and I knew him from the town. We had picked him up a few times on the ambulance like years ago when he was more able-bodied, and he was kind of like an assertive guy and not really in a good mood, and he'd kind of boss around the paramedics and that kind of character. And so it was interesting that I got matched up with him in the hospice, because I totally remembered him. But he had changed so much. He had been given a diagnosis of terminal cancer. He had a couple months to live, and he was just like stuck in this room. And they had told me that he had a son who lived like in a different part of Canada, so he didn't have any visitors. So there he was, really, really, he still was him. Like, he still wasn't like a super happy guy, but he was very weak and he was sleeping a lot. And the first couple times I visited, he still would like kind of have more like intellectual conversations, talk about the news, have kind of like a negative opinion about stuff. But then as the weeks passed, I would go, and he wasn't concerned at all about the news. He no longer watched the TV. He often would talk about his regrets, the way that he treated his ex-wife, the way that he treated his son. And for the first time ever, I heard him share about many of the regrets of his life. And he was very troubled. So my job was just to kind of be there and allow him to speak and, move through his process. That's all I was there to do. But it seemed to be that was what he needed to do for himself at that time in order to prepare. It was like a process was taking place that he was just part of. It was like, I would even call it like the true spirit of the person was starting to like purge out what had not been looked at, what had not been seen in waking life. Now there was like the ego starting to dissolve, the body's not working, everything comes up. Everything will come up in all of our lives. If you die in an instant, it'll probably be a review process after death. And if you have the chance to be in a slow dying process, something like this can happen. And it's a blessing if it does. And then in the last couple of weeks, I actually wasn't around when he did die. My house had just sold. And so we kind of transitioned to another companion for him before he died. But the last couple of times that I visited him, he was not really in consciousness anymore. And I remember him saying to me one time, "Can you tell those two to be quiet?" And nobody else was in the room. It was just me and him, and it was totally silent. I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, those two over there in the corner, can you tell them to be quiet? I want to talk to you." And I realized that he he was partway in the other world where he was headed to next. And he was also in this world, and he thought I could see what he could see and hear. And, this kind of thing had happened other times, like as a paramedic, where the person was like often looking in the distance and describing something they could see, and they thought that I could see it too. So, that in itself is kind of like a beautiful reminder that this is a process and that the other side is real. And yeah, I would just say that hospice experience helped me to integrate the other side that had suddenly become real for me when I started to like doubt my own experience because nobody else seemed to know what I was talking about. These people were having something like that happen to them.
That's profound. I love that. That's profound. Thank you for sharing that. So what do you do as an empathic coach? What is an empathic coach? And tell us what you do.
Yeah, so I have my training as a certified trauma coach, and the people that usually I work with are people who are experiencing spiritual awakenings, not necessarily had a near-death experience, but are starting to wake up to things about themselves or about what's going on in their environment that are starting to be troubling, more loud than ever, maybe spiritual phenomena, and start to maybe feel different than the people around them and are struggling with that process. As well as empathic people who are highly sensitive and can feel the mood of other people, can almost know what people are thinking sometimes, and that experience can be very overwhelming. Some of the things that people in that group, and I include myself in that group of empathic people, is we struggle sometimes with boundaries. We struggle sometimes with trusting our own intuition because many times we're told that we're wrong. And many of us have grown up with early childhood trauma. And so my coaching is usually getting to know where a person's at, what are the big things that are showing up in their life related to those kind of topics, and where they want to get to next, what kind of freedom that they want to be experiencing in life while they still have a spiritual awakening process going on, while they're still experiencing the empathic gifts? How can we get stronger while this is happening to us? So yeah, that's a bit about what I do.
This is very needed, Amanda. Thank you for being in this space. That is very needed. Many people have had near-death experiences or other, I have so many friends who've had psychic experiences, especially as a child, and I know you have as well, where they did not have the language or the support, because their parents discounted what they saw and experienced. And you're right, we just hold these, these traumas, and even as adults, not sure how to integrate them. And so that's significant. Thank you for doing that. So I understand that your website is lionspiritcoaching.com. Why did you choose that name, Lion Spirit?
Yeah. So have you heard of a term called the Guardians of the Threshold?
The Guardians I have, but of the
Okay.
Threshold, I'm not too familiar.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's something that it was a new term to me, as in the last couple of years. Basically, one way of describing the Guardians of the Threshold is, when you think of churches in Europe or even like temples in Asia, and there's like two lions or like dragons, like two kind of scary looking beings side by side.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that is in many people's visionary experiences, whether it's from plant medicine or a deep meditation or a dream, they go through like a difficult kind of like a hellish experience. And if they can keep their wits about them and keep grounded and trusting in God, that part will pass, and then more knowledge and visions can come. And in one of my earlier ayahuasca ceremonies, I was in the first part of the ceremony. I was in a pretty dark place, and I remember seeing the heads of wildcats, and it was absolutely frightening. What am I doing here? This doesn't even make sense. I'd never heard of the Guardians at the Threshold. And so I had to use my own resources and like really center myself and trust and breathe and get through it. And then the second half of the ceremony were a lot of really special teaching visions from divine beings. And so then later on, when I heard about the Guardians of the Threshold, I realized that those lions are those beings that are kind of like side by side in the front of these churches and temples. They're meant to keep out people who are not quite ready to hold higher levels of energy. And so sometimes, and other times, I've turned back, like whoa, this is too much, kind of thing. And so to call my coaching Lion Spirit Coaching, it's a call to myself and to other people who are raising themselves in the courage to face what needs to be faced.
There's so much to you, Amanda. I mean, so much wisdom, so much experience. Incredible. It's like we haven't even gotten into your experience or your visions of Atlantis and Sirius, and we can't get to it. But so much depth to you. So I love it. It's so juicy to me. That's my word. It's so juicy. But do you have any, as if you hadn't shared enough, Amanda, do you have any like last words of wisdom that you would like to share to the viewers?
Yeah. Just know for sure that we can't take anything with us. I know that kind of goes without saying, but just loosen your grip to things in the material world and just allow them to be temporary things that are passing through, including attachments to people or a certain level of income or a reputation or, a status of some sort. Just hold loosely. Those things aren't you. Those things are not me. It's our innocent, curious, childlike spirit that is really us and that will pass pass out of here. And so identifying with, you know, the way that you look or how many people follow you or like you on social media, those things really don't matter at all. They really don't speak to your value. Your value is your ability to be free, to be detached, to be in the flow of nature and divinity. So yeah, just try and stick with that. That's what really matters.
Yes, Amanda, that's very significant because I understand that you were in a position where you had friendships expire because as energy, we vibrate with one another or we don't. And so along with you releasing the weight of the house and your things, that you had also friendships and relationships that that broke away, for lack of a better word. So tell us how people can contact you if you're open to that, not only for coaching, but just if they had questions. How would you like to be contacted?
Yeah, sure. If you go to my website, which is lionspiritcoaching.com, you can click on, there's a contact form. And yeah, that just forwards messages to my email.
Yes, and I'll have that actually flashing on the screen. I try to make it easy for everyone to contact my wonderful guests. So I'm going to read your closing remarks, Amanda. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a rich experience, a rich conversation having you with us. So, Amanda, here in this dimension, our greatest mission and yet our toughest challenge is to remember that which we are. Sometimes we encounter traumatic events in our lives on this dense plane that can convince us that we are small and insignificant to ourselves and others. Yet these very situations that can keep us in a dream of powerlessness are often the same experiences that have the potential to wake us up. And it is the pain and the chaos that can be the catalyst to remember our divinity and our power. But we sometimes get stuck in these circumstances of the lesson rather than ascend to our truth. We can sometimes get stuck in the experience of domestic violence or trauma or childhood trauma. And this is where your work is invaluable, Amanda. You are among those who remember that we are made of love and light. And because you are crystal clear that we are not our bodies, you are able to correct the perception of smallness to inspiration. And so for that, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being on the show with us. Thank you for being on the planet with us. We benefit from your presence, and we appreciate the contribution that you offer, to our collective journey of ascension. We are honored that you've joined us today, and it's just been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much, Loretta. And it's a pleasure for me too, because it gives me a reminder and a reason for coming through the accident and still being here, because that was a really beautiful place that I would have loved to stay at. So these kind of conversations give me they give me a fresh reminder and reason for why I came back from that accident.
Yes, I always tell NDEers, thank you for coming back. It's tough, right? It's just it's a place of unconditional love, and it's tough. But thank you for joining us again in this round. And with that, Amanda, we close with a heart symbolizing love. Beautiful, beautiful. And thank you, everyone, for stopping by. I hope that you learned so much and felt the vibration of joy and love like I did in my conversation with Amanda. Thank you for stopping by. Please subscribe and share all that good stuff. And thank you for your presence. Love everyone. Love and light. Bye-bye.